You tonight. I want to get you straight to Yemen, a country, as I've told you many times before, utterly devastated by war. CNN's international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson is in Yemen, in the port city of Aden, with what is an exclusive report. Nick.
Becky, what we're learning while we've been here in Yemen and in Saudi Arabia about the Houthis, about the situation in the country, has been staggering. There have been to places, visited people, talked to people who haven't had a chance to tell their stories yet. But one of the stories here is now coming out in UN reports, and that is that the missiles, the ballistic missiles that the Houthi rebels are firing into neighboring Saudi Arabia, they're getting help from Iran. The missiles in the UN report, the UN says, are Iranian made. Saudi officials gave us exclusive access to one of those missiles that they shot down en route to the capital, Riyadh.
Laid out in a Saudi military base, the remains of a ballistic missile fired from Yemen.
Some of the missile fragments, like these, are tiny. The Saudis say they were scattered across the desert from where their anti-ballistic missile system shot this down as it was flying towards the capital.
CNN is the first news crew to be shown this Houthi rocket, brought down last month about 15 miles from Riyadh. It is evidence, officials here say, Iran is backing the Yemeni rebels, who are increasing attacks targeting Saudi civilians.
It's the positioning of these valves on the side of the missile that convinced the Saudis this is Iranian manufactured. They say they have to do a lot more testing on this, scientific analysis of the metals, they have to look at the explosives and look at the electronic circuit boards here as well, examine the wiring, figure out, for example, where the chips on this circuit board were made.
Their immediate worry, though, a missile hits the capital. Population more than 7.5 million people.
The Houthis, he has to know, even with the hostile act, there is a red line.
What's the red line?
We cannot declare the red line, but if our vital point or our people, they have been affected because of the ballistic missile, the Houthi, he has to assume it's going to be very painful to him.
It's not the only recent escalation that's worrying the Saudis. This month, Saudi officials say they stopped an Iranian-aided Houthi attack on an oil tanker in the Red Sea. The Houthis vow more attacks may come. But both the shipping and missile attacks point to a potential dangerous overspill of Yemen's civil war.
The Saudis say they believe this massive missile was smuggled into Yemen in separate parts, and the clue, they say, is in the welding here, different types of welding covered with different shades of paint.
The last one being fired and intercepted 30 minutes ago or 1 hour ago, now we are reaching up to 88. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have received 88 ballistic missiles from the Houthi.
In the past few months, the pace of missile attacks has picked up, with more fired at major cities. Officials won't say precisely what they'll do should their red line be crossed.
And you know, just since we did that interview and saw that ballistic missile just a few days ago, there's been another ballistic missile fired by the Houthis into Saudi Arabia. So this concern grows. There seems to be an increase. And while the spokesman and other officials we've talked to won't talk about what happens if a red line is crossed, it's very clear that this escalation is giving them great cause for concern about what's happening here in Yemen.
CNN live exclusively in Aden in Yemen tonight. Nick, we hear that the Saudis are depositing $2 billion in Yemen's central bank to shore up the weak Yemeni currency. What is going on here?
Yeah, I met with Yemen's Prime Minister yesterday. We sat down and talked for several hours, and the economy is one of his biggest concerns. I was out in markets today talking to Yemenis on the streets here. It is one of their biggest concerns as well. The value of the Yemeni rial has halved, dropped by half in recent months. What the Yemeni Prime Minister told me is that they need more help. he issued a letter yesterday calling on Saudi Arabia to provide that financial help. We know that the president of Yemen, who's in Saudi Arabia, met with Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, to ask about this issue as well. So the Crown Prince, the King, has announced this additional $2 billion to help shore up the financial system in Yemen. We know that there's vast amounts of malnutrition in the country. About 7 million people, according to the UN, are malnourished. That there is, according to the UN, that this is the worst. Yemen is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. And what the Prime Minister told me is there is a fundamental reason why the economy is doing so badly, not just the war. When the Houthis took the capital, Sana'a, they took control of the central bank. Since then, the legitimate elected government of Yemen that's here in Aden has re-established a central bank. It's internationally recognized. They have their money, the bills, printed in Russia. But what the Houthis, the Prime Minister told me, are now doing is they are printing their own money with the help of Iran. This is what he told me.
The Yemeni rial deteriorated because of the later practices made by the Houthis, as they tried forging and printing the currency against the law. Also, the Iranians were involved in bringing currency printing equipment from Western institutions to print the Yemeni rial, and I believe they have succeeded. They flooded the market.
So that's his problem, he says, that there's too much currency washing around because the Houthis, who no longer have control of the legitimate central bank of the country, are printing their own money as if they are. So how can the government, he says, therefore, manage the economy? He also told me that when the Houthis came and took the central bank in the capital, that they looted $5.2 billion in hard currency. The Saudis now contributing $2 billion to help the Yemeni government out.
Nick Robertson live for you exclusively in Aden in Yemen tonight.